First, let's start with this case. My family and I were about 20 minutes into watching a Christmas movie when I got up to check on the cookies in the oven. I left my hot chocolate on the table, and unfortunately, it spilled. There was already a small paper towel on the table with a bit of chocolate on it. For some reason, I moved it to a different table, but I then noticed that the chocolate from the paper towel had transferred to that table as well. Deciding it was better to start fresh, I threw the napkin away and grabbed new ones. As I was doing this, the timer for the cookies went off, adding to the chaos. Meanwhile, my mother, father, and younger sister sat on the couch, silently watching everything unfold. My mother noticed that I had thrown away the paper towel and began lecturing me about wasting it. She pointed out that I could have used the napkin to clean up the mess instead of discarding it. Feeling overwhelmed and distracted by everything happening at once, I explained that it was too late to use the napkin, and that I would need more to properly clean the spill anyway. I emphasized that the important thing was simply to clean up the mess, not to focus on whether I kept the napkin or not. The discussion quickly escalated when my father joined in, agreeing with my mother. He, too, thought I should have kept the napkin, and the conversation turned into a heated exchange. Frustrated, I finally exclaimed to my mother, "You think everything is such a big deal." This comment only made things worse. My mother stormed off to her bedroom, clearly upset. As the argument continued, my father and I began yelling at each other. The tension was palpable, and at that moment, my mother, still upset in her room, started banging on the wall in frustration. Not long after, she came out of her room and, in her anger, aggressively pushed me toward the stairs, demanding that I go to my room. The push was strong enough that I lost my balance and fell down the stairs. My younger sister, who had been quietly observing the situation, was visibly upset and ran off, distressed by what she had seen. I tried to reason with my mother, reminding her that my sister was watching all of this unfold, but my mother simply replied, "Let her watch," before walking away. Shaken and deeply upset, I went to my room to process everything that had just happened. Let's start judging. How old are you? If you are a minor, please consider telling a trusted adult. Your mother pushed you, causing you to fall down the stairs? This is abuse. Please tell someone. I'm a parent. My kid does crazy nonsense all the time because she's a kid and she has ADHD. I've never once even considered hurting or pushing her. The very few times I've yelled at her, I've felt guilty for days. You're not in the wrong. They could have easily just have said, "Honey, next time you see a barely used napkin, try to use it more before you toss it away." Instead, they went on a rainy and started yelling and hitting stuff. If this is a common occurrence, you need to think about leaving as soon as you turn 18. Your parents went way over the line on this one. But why give a match to people who set fires? "Thanks, Mom. I'll remember to do that next time." Again, you're not in the wrong, but it sounds like you need some tricks to not escalate situations so you don't get pushed down the stairs. The other option is to call the police when this shit happens. Coping strategies are only going to get you so far, I'm guessing. Next up, my husband used to go out with his high school friends on Christmas night while they were in town. I'll admit I've never liked this tradition. To me, Christmas Day is a time to spend with family, not friends. Over the last few years, this tradition hasn't even happened. Most of his friends now have families or have moved on. Today, on Christmas Eve, my husband announced that he was making plans to go out with Michael, one of his high school friends, tomorrow night. Michael only comes into town for Christmas. I felt upset. We're spending Christmas Day with my family, and they've made some thoughtful accommodations to allow us to stay late into the evening, despite having young children. My family moved the gathering to our house after gift giving to make things easier for us. They even planned for us to enjoy dinner and games while the kids are asleep. My husband and I had a tense conversation. He claimed I had agreed to him seeing his friends months ago. He reminded me of a past discussion where I asked how I could support his friendships, and he had replied, "Support me seeing my friends when they are in town." He said this meant Christmas night, as it was a long-standing tradition. He argued that I should have known what he meant because he always met up with friends on Christmas night. I told him he should have given me a few weeks' notice instead of bringing it up on Christmas Eve. He responded by saying I hadn't told him our family plans would go late into the evening. In fairness, I hadn't explicitly said so, but I thought it was clear based on the plans I'd shared earlier. I suggested alternative times, like meeting his friend tonight, tomorrow after 10 p.m., or during the kids' nap time. However, my husband insisted those times wouldn't work. He explained that Michael would likely want to spend the day with his own family and wouldn't be willing to stay out late due to an early flight. He reiterated that this tradition always happened on Christmas night. Ultimately, he agreed not to go out with his friend, but now we're both upset with each other. He feels like I'm breaking a promise to support his friendships and not valuing them enough. Meanwhile, I feel frustrated that he didn't communicate this sooner, especially when we had a Christmas planning meeting just a few days ago. Instead of enjoying time with his family, we've been finding little corners to argue in, which has ruined the mood. Since I didn't want to spoil anyone else's Christmas, I didn't reach out to friends or family to talk about this. However, my husband later proposed meeting Michael during the kids' nap time tomorrow. I agreed to ask my family if that timing worked, but I still feel uneasy about how everything unfolded. Some additional context. During our planning meeting last Saturday, my husband didn't mention his desire to meet Michael. He assumed our family dinner was actually lunch. This miscommunication about what dinner means isn't new for us, but I still don't understand why he didn't bring up his plans at the time. We've since talked again, and I've asked him to consider compromises. If Michael can meet during the day, they'll meet then. If not, my husband will go out with Michael right after supper for an hour or two. I've also requested that they meet somewhere close to our house to minimize travel time. While I understand that supporting his friendships is important, I still believe last-minute plans like this should be communicated well in advance, especially when they conflict with previously arranged family plans. If that makes me unreasonable, then I accept that. My husband and I are no longer arguing, and Christmas is back on track. We've agreed to discuss any of his Christmas traditions well before Christmas Eve in the future. Let's start judging. You're in the wrong. I understand that you want to spend Christmas with your family, but this is a thing. People who live out of town often only have a day or two in town, and they need to cram in seeing people when they can. You've got to compromise. If he can't see his friend during this time, he's asked for. When can he see him? Probably never. So, it's either you let him have this time, or he misses out on his friend. And an entire year goes by before he can see him again. I understand that it's Christmas and it's special, but you have your husband every other day of the year. This is the one day he can see this guy. Let him. Apologize, let him go, and try not to let this ruin your holiday. Enjoy the time with your parents while he's gone. Let your kids have some quality grandparent time and move on. The whole Christmas is for family idea is nonsense. Christmas is for the people you love. They don't have to be blood relatives. You're with your husband and kids every other night of the year. Men always complain that they don't have deep friendships. And here there are, two men trying to keep in touch and keep a relationship going, and you're getting in the way and making it impossible. This is a good thing. I'd be encouraging him to go. I would encourage them to make better plans. Maybe see each other at a time other than Christmas Day next time. Plan to both be in town for an extra day, have brunch on the 26th or something, book a later flight, so this doesn't happen again next year. But if it does happen again next year, let him go. Friendships are important. He's not bad for wanting to see his friend. You're in the wrong. Omung. You get your husband every single day of the year. You can't just let him have a few hours. He has to sit around your family all day, accommodating whatever traditions you all have, but you have no respect for his because they are just friends. Come closer to the mic so you can explain to everyone how much you don't support your spouse. This friendship is important to him, and his tradition means a lot to him. You don't need to understand it. You don't need to agree with it. But the very least you can do is give him the same grace to practice that he's given you every single year up until now. You said it yourself. You weren't clear. How are you upset at him for not knowing what you didn't communicate? On the flip side, you did know that the meeting would take place the evening of Christmas because it historically always had. You had no reason to believe anything had changed in terms of his tradition. Does he know how you feel about it? The fact that he feels he needs to ask you permission for a few hours of seeing his friends that he only has access to once a year when you already had him all day is selfish on your part. A chosen family is still family. It would be nice if you could see it that way for his sake too. I honestly don't understand what you're upset about. I read through initially thinking I'd be on your side, and then I was perplexed. He's going to be there for Christmas morning with your kids and dinner with your whole family. You knew this was happening, and it sounds like you're spending the whole day with your family. It's not like you two live in a city with no family and he's leaving you alone. He's participating in all the major events, and once it's winding down, he wants to see someone else he cares about. As someone whose friends are family, I'd be so upset if my friend's partner prohibited them from taking a few hours to meet up while I was in town. Let him go. Next up, for context. I've been married to my wife for about 10 years, and we're a mixed-race couple. I'm Asian, and she's Caucasian. I've generally gotten along with her family, including my mother-in-law, brother-in-law, and one of her sisters-in-law. However, I've always felt like her father-in-law and her other sister-in-law, Sarah, never liked me. I'm a professionally trained chef with over 15 years of experience. I work at a high-end Chinese restaurant, a spin-off of a well-known establishment in Beijing, located in a large U.S. city. My team and I have won several awards, and I've been told I'm next in line to become the executive chef. Sarah is also a professionally trained chef and works at a well-known upscale French restaurant in the same city. She frequently brags about her work and often compares herself out loud to famous chefs like Gordon Ramsay and Anthony Bourdain. Whenever I'm at my in-laws' house and helping out in the kitchen, Sarah always criticizes what I'm doing. Whether it's how I chop, marinate, or braise, she makes comments like, "Actually, I think you should do it this way instead." I've been patient, sidestepping her remarks with responses like, "Thanks, but I'll stick to my method." Things escalated 2 weeks ago while my wife, in-laws, and I were preparing dinner for my mother-in-law's birthday. We were behind schedule, which made the kitchen atmosphere tense, something I'm comfortable with, as it reminded me of my work environment. That's when Sarah walked in, took one look at what I was doing, and scoffed, saying, "Oh wow, okay, that's not the right way to do things." Her comment hit a nerve, and I firmly told her to stop criticizing my cooking because I, too, am a chef like her. She laughed and replied, "Making kung pao chicken at some Chinese restaurant doesn't count." The kitchen went silent. My father-in-law chuckled, and my mother-in-law immediately yelled, "Sarah, what is wrong with you?" I stopped what I was doing, told Sarah her comment was blatantly prejudiced, apologized to my mother-in-law for leaving, and walked out with my wife. Apparently, my departure caused a massive fight after we left. My mother-in-law, brother-in-law, and other sister-in-law took my side, while my father-in-law and Sarah insisted it was just a joke and accused me of being too sensitive. The extended family somehow caught wind of the incident, which led to even more arguments, with some family members messaging my wife to apologize for Sarah's behavior. Although my wife supported me, she began urging me to apologize to Sarah to de-escalate the situation. I refused because her behavior was unacceptable. My wife later informed me that Sarah was in trouble at work because of what happened. Apparently, one of her co-workers overheard her ranting about the incident and reported it to management. Sarah blamed me, although my wife partly held me responsible too. Things worsened when one of my wife's cousins found this story online and shared it on Sarah's Facebook page with the caption, "This is you, right?" Her friends began commenting, expressing disappointment. Sarah's employer became aware of this, and combined with her earlier rant, she was demoted to a line cook and is now at risk of being let go. I received a voicemail from my father-in-law threatening me to delete my online post. His exact words were, "Your presence was only being tolerated up until this point," followed by a vague threat of a world of hurt. My mother-in-law was horrified upon hearing this, and later announced she was divorcing him after years of marital strain. Sarah resigned from her job after realizing she had lost the respect of her team. Unfortunately for her, word of the incident spread within the local culinary community, effectively blacklisting her from high-end restaurants in the area. She's now considering selling her home and moving elsewhere to find work. While she hasn't apologized to me, I reached out to colleagues in other states to see if they had any opportunities for her, hoping to rise above the situation and offer her a second chance. Although justice was served in some ways, this doesn't feel like a happy ending. Relationships within my wife's family are fractured, and while Sarah's career suffered consequences due to her actions, I never intended for it to go this far. My wife and I are committed to moving forward and focusing on our own family. This experience has been a harsh reminder of the importance of mutual respect and the damage caused by prejudice. Let's start judging. You're not in the wrong. I'm disappointed in your wife. Enabling her racist sister and dad over her husband is not a good look. And with the edit, apparently Sarah can't keep her racist mouth shut anywhere, and that consequence is on her. Please, for God's sake, do not apologize. Sarah is racist. It may well have been a joke, but it was a racist joke. I'd be goddamn livid that your wife is telling you to apologize. That is disgusting behavior from her, and she's saying that racism is acceptable, even when it's against someone she loves. At least there are some in her family who don't think racism is fine. I'd be scorched earth over this. You're not in the wrong. That is some racist nonsense. And if your sister-in-law is bringing it out at work, she should get in trouble. I'm Asian and white, and that means that I get to pass sometimes, which has led to me receiving all sorts of educational in-group experiences with white people. Someone who talks like this to your face is a lot worse behind your back. Then there's the generalized racism of the entire notion that Asian food is crap and French is somehow elevated. Chinese cooking can require incredible skill and timing. There is literally nothing that French cuisine has that Asian cuisine doesn't, in terms of delicacy of the art, care taken with flavor and technique, or impressiveness of final product. Asian food is frequently inexpensive in the States because that's how our immigrating families survived, taking their recipes and making them sweeter and saltier because that's what white people wanted. But American Chinese food and traditional Chinese food aren't the same thing. And it's just filthily racist to insist that there's no such thing as good Chinese. For non-Asian readers in the crowd, the documentary Searching for General Tso was pretty good. Your wife is also idiot for telling you to apologize. She needs to grow a spine. What happens when the fighting stops if it means you've had to compromise yourself? Does she realize what she's asking of you? Edit. In response to the edits, if Sarah gets fired for being a racist at work, guess what? The person she was racist at ain't the problem. OP's wife, who I assume will go through the comments, blaming the victim is not cool. Sarah's cousin? That might have been AmITheA kicking a bit. Not sure what you intended to accomplish by it? Hopefully you're supporting OP, right? Doug, you need to fix your heart. OP's wife, good job clearing your head. Your husband is definitely not the idiot here. And it's not his responsibility to crawl before your sister's ego just so she'll stop being outwardly racist for a minute. If I had $1 for every time one of George Takei's social media interns scraped one of my comments for his stupid website, I'd have enough for pizza from one of those really upscale places. Do you hear me, Takei? You owe me a pizza. You're not in the wrong. I'm also a chef and restaurant owner. Lots of Michelin stars on my resume, lots of awards, lots of certifications. My repertoire and experience and the bulk of my career is based in French cuisine, which, I'm sure you're aware of, is thought as the base of elite cooking. But we are also thought of as arrogant and full of ourselves. And it's a reputation many of us have earned. So, it's something a lot of our friends and family have learned to deal with. Which doesn't make it okay. What you do absolutely deserves respect. And the fact the she and you father-in-law so quickly snickered at an obviously racially charged comment is very telling. The added fact that your mother-in-law immediately spoke up in opposition lets you know it's been a topic of conversation while you aren't there. And you should easily be able to tell who is a decent family member and who is an idiot. Furthermore, It's hilarious that she compares herself to Ramsay and Bourdain, two TV personalities that don't garner much respect within the very high end of our community. If she'd said Keller, Rippert, Trosgros, Levborough, or Passard, I would think she knows what she's talking about. But since she didn't, she's obviously only learned to act like a French chef, not how to cook or study like one.